All right, guys, I am here today to talk about The Lies of Locke Lamora, Book 1 in the Gentleman Bastard sequence by Scott Lynch. All right, as always, let's start off with the pros. Okay, one thing I really like about this book is the take on this fantasy traditional archetype of these orphan thieves. And I think Scott does a really good job with making Locke and his friends uh, interesting characters, each to their own. Even the side characters that we don't get to spend a lot of time with. Um, there are, to me, this is a pro, but this could potentially be something that you wouldn't want to read this book. But the world of this story is violent and kind of brutal. Um, and Scott does not pull any punches in that. There is some scenes that are described very vividly, and I like that because it sets, and he does it a really good way where he sets the stakes and the tone of this world almost from the beginning of the book. Like, we get it very early on, like, this is how brutal this world is, and no one's going to be pulling punches. um Locke is a super fun character. I i always love clever characters, especially when the writer does a good job of like utilizing that character to think their way out of situations in a good way. I There's clear flaws and weaknesses to Locke that are interesting and compelling, and the way he maneuvers and gets through some of these situations is like, of course he did. That's awesome. Like, that makes total sense how he weaseled his way out of this situation this time. It's the classic, like, like, con man, and it's awesome, and I love it. Okay, let's get to some critiques, some things that I was a little thrown off by in the book. So this is the first book of multiple books, but uh, let's start off with Locke and his four friends. We get introduced to them almost right away, and I'm gonna kind of tie this in with a second partial critique, and that's the way this book is set up. So the way this book is set up is it switches off and on between the present day and the past. Um, and he does it in a way that I haven't really seen that much before. Like, we get flashback in plenty of books and stories and stuff like that, but like the way this is done is like there are two stories until closer to the end when everything starts to wrap up. There are two stories going on at the same time, and so we're getting, the past, and we're seeing how Locke came to be in the first place, and we're getting the present of where Locke is now and what's going on now. uh that can be good, but in the beginning of this book it was extremely confusing because, like, I want to know what's going on in the present, or like I want to get the story of the past and then get shifted. But I know he uses it to drive tension, and I get it, but this is my point where it goes into the characters. We get introduced to Locke and his four friends very early on, and I had no idea who was who. I had zero clue. And it's not that they don't have different voices and stuff, because they do. It's just like there's so many names coming at me at once that the first read through, it was like, wait, what? Who is talking right now? Who is this? Who is that? Um, and that's fine. A lot of fantasy writers have that, and it can be a problem sometimes. But I don't think it's like a detriment to the book. It's something that's a little bit harder for a reader to latch on to right away. It's hard to latch on to the characters right off the bat. It gets easier as time goes on. Um, and this isn't necessarily a critique. It's just a thing that he does that I was like, this is weird and I haven't seen it before, but it's okay. So there's like numbering per chapter, and I don't know, one of you might know exactly why he does this. I haven't done like a ton of like research on specifically why he would have done this or stuff like that. The way I see it is he's using numbering per chapter to break up scenes. So there's like scene 1, scene 2, scene 3, and it does give it a nice clean break. So if we're shifting location, he doesn't need to do as much of a transition. So that might be why he's doing it. Um, it didn't throw me off. It was just a little different. I've never seen it done before. So, um, okay, let me just I'm trying to make sure that I don't give any spoilers until a little bit later in the review, and then I'll give a spoiler warning before that. So, um, there is I'm gonna go into this a little bit more in detail after I give the spoiler warning, but there is a part at the end of the book where some things just kind of happen and I wasn't really digging it. It was I don't want to give anything away right now, but it was just one of those things where it's like that was kind of convenient and kind of rushed it felt. And that's okay. I mean, it's the first book. Sometimes you get things like that. Endings are hard, so I'm not too mad. It's just part of it that I was like, eh. Um, I'm gonna do my recommended, and then I'm gonna go into a little bit more spoiler discussion. So I try to go at the end, especially of these first books of series and stuff like that I'm reviewing. I try to do like a recommended of who would potentially be good at reading, who would want to read this stuff like that. So I've heard a lot about this book. It's been recommended to me by, mostly by the internet and other people, just like singing its praises in a lot of places that I frequent. Slash, some of my friends are really big Redditors and will like just send me book lists of like, hey, have you read this? Have you read these fantasy books yet? I mean, this is a loose fantasy book, I would say. There are fantasy elements to it, but it's mostly like a heist book more. So if you are interested in characters that are clever, that are, they do have depth. If you're interested more in like the heist in like a con man type story, there is magic and things that happen in the book, but it's not like necessarily, it's not the centerpiece. And I know sometimes like I love magic and fantasy books, but it's not the centerpiece of this. That's not a bad thing. It's just if you don't prefer that, then this is not the book for you. But overall, if you love a good character driven book, I would say you give this one a shot. I think this is a good book. There's a lot of good pieces about it. It's not too terribly long, but I also have a warped view of long books because, I read a lot of epic fantasy, so I can sit down and read a 1,200 page book. Well, I mostly listen to my books, but I can sit there and listen to a 50-hour audiobook, and I have no problem. I've done that for some series like multiple times. But yeah, it's not too bad. So I definitely would put it up there as like something that I would like. I might not recommend it to the early like fantasy reader or stuff like that, but if someone's like, hey, I really like this archetype, these thieves type stories, I would be like, hey, this might be something you want to check out. So, okay. So now I'm going to go into a little bit more spoiler things. So if you don't want any spoilers, leave now. 3 seconds, 2, 1. Okay. If you're still here, spoilers. So when I'm talking about like the vividness and cruelty of the book, and if you've read it, you know what I'm going to be talking about. There's a scene with horse piss, and it is disgusting and fascinating. I feel like I should have seen this happen before. I've seen, other like there's plenty of books out there that are gruesome and stuff like that and shows but like I was like it was horrible. It was horrifying to see. But it was one of those things where it's like it's so horrifying that I can't stop. Like you can't look away from the car crash. It was interesting. And it was kind of a creative way of like really setting this world into motion. Let me talk about the ending struggle that I kind of glanced over. There in the end, they have these statues that they need to go remove from, so they don't kill anyone because they have a stone in them that makes people. I think the term in the book is gentle, But basically, it makes people like mindless, and they use it on animals sometimes to make them easier to control, like horses and stuff like that. Um, I felt like that. I liked the setup. I liked that Locke was basically given a choice, and he's like, I choose both, because I think the way that he does it is he's just a clever character. By that point in the book, I believe that he could pull off both because he's just this master con artist. But I felt like there was a lot of tension building up to that, and the conversation to get rid of the statues the conversation to get rid of the statue was kind of like, yeah, okay. I like it felt like he could have either cut it shorter or something else should have gone wrong. Because like Locke's trying to convince these characters of like why would I come back here after I got a clean getaway? Why would I come back to get caught? and like since the characters he's dealing with are also intelligent, it's like that immediate thought would be like, okay, this guy is clearly telling us the truth. Why would he do this, right? And I think that it's just drawn on for a little bit too long to where it's like, and then by the time he's like, he convinces them, and I know there's like some magic going on and stuff like that with the spider, but like when he finally convinces him, it's like, okay, let's all work together to get this done. And I'm just like, okay. And then like the statue like part is like, there's no tension. There's no, things don't go wrong. It's just a boom. It's done. And it's like, okay, well, Locke doesn't need to be there to help carry these statues up the thing. Then if there's not going to be any more tension developed in this scene, then have Locke dip, have him go take out, have the guards move the statues and have Locke have his final conversation with the spider and have him get, because that conversation where he convinces her to sink the ship in the harbor that has all the money on it is awesome. And it's awesome when we get a scene later on where she's like, she puts the pieces together, how he slipped it into the conversation without really lying, but still kind of like tricking them. And it's so funny when she figures it out. And I was like, that's awesome. One other thing that I had a little bit of a problem with, and I don't think it's that big of a deal, but it's one thing that I'm like, why don't we get Locke's real name by the end of the book? Like, he tells Jean his real name, and I didn't understand why the reader couldn't hear that. It could be because Scott doesn't know at this point, or maybe he does know, but that might be subject to change. Like, he doesn't know where the series is going to go by this point, and so like he doesn't want to give that away, so it kind of gives him a little bit more room to work with. I get it, but it's also just like, then don't bring it up. Just like, don't have him tell Jean if you're not going to have him tell us too. And like, and even then it's a name, right? So it doesn't mean anything to us unless like he puts a title or something with it. It might not mean anything to us right now, but then it comes down the line and it's like, oh wow, that's who this is. We can put the pieces together a little bit quicker. But I know he probably wants to save that for a mystery. But again, just cut that. Don't put that in the book. Don't tease us and then not give us the answer. But overall, this is still a good book. It's hard sometimes when you get into books that like you don't know about, and like everyone has their own personal taste. So that's my cat going nuts. Everyone has their own personal taste on books, and like my hope is to like give people a place to discuss, things a little bit more, cordially and politely, and not be jerks to each other, because fandoms can sometimes get very like heated and like, oh, if you don't like my book, you're just wrong. And no, that's not the case. Everyone has their own taste. I know plenty of people who I work with in workshop and stuff, and we just don't have the same taste, so we're not good readers for each other. And that's fine. It's fine to not like something, right? So hopefully people understand that and we can talk about it, because like I don't like, for me this isn't one of my favorite books, but I definitely think it's worth a read. It's definitely like, Scott's writing is good. Don't get me wrong. His prose writing is very good. But sometimes things get overhyped. So that's just more of my point. So I think that's going to be it. If you like the video, be sure to like it, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you guys next time.